Yo guys, welcome. We are live now. Thanks for joining at late this tonight, 8:30 p.m. So we are back with our usual JavaScript, KLJS JavaScript every end of the Wednesday of every month. We have a speaker from down the south from Singapore tonight. So I know we took a long break with December, and January is it's a usual break. Hoping that, but this time we were hoping that things will improve over the MCO and COVID situation, but seems like it didn't do much anyway. So okay, let me just share. I think I shared it wrong. So that's what we're trying to hope lah. So hopefully things goes better over the days coming days. So and we can do better lah. So sorry, I was sharing a wrong slide. Let's just wait for a couple of minutes for people to start coming in, and then we can go on. The speaker is ready and all is set. Meanwhile, if you have any questions regarding KLJS or any questions about how we want to do committee or tech committee manager or what, or you get to speakers as well, you can just put in a comment. We'll just answer it after the session. So feel free to be engaging and stuff. So give me like 1 or 2 minutes, and then we start. Get the ball rolling. So yep, so let me get started, right? So yeah, Konsi Fasha to you, Ming. So I can read your comment as well. Like good to see we have a lot of people up at late this night. Okay. Okay, let's just quickly we go through an intro, and then probably like we can start with the speaker at 8:40 or 8:35 around there. So KLJS itself been running this for a couple of years now, but thanks to the COVID situation, we moved to online now. We're still looking for speakers, so if you're interested, just come and hop in, and just feel free to like get in touch with us. We are happy to help you out to get give you a talk and stuff like that. We're always looking for speakers. If you're looking for tech meetups, you can go to devkami.com/meetups. So we have a personally created meetups happening in Malaysia. All interesting meetups are going on. Used to be more, I think, but now it's less, but still we are going strong. So feel free and join us. Give us your support so we can keep going. And for today's agenda, right, we have Li Hau he's from Penang. Penang itself is a local Malaysian, but he's working in Singapore as a front-end engineer with Shopee. And it's also interestingly a maintainer for Svelte.js. So if you don't know about JS, ask him about it, what Svelte.js is. And if I think it's quite popular in the US and Europe as well. A lot of people are using it. So and his title is very interesting as well. You're going to talk about compile Svelte in your head. So how you want to compile your Svelte in your head, that's something you need to watch out for it. Like, and it's going to be a short and sweet kind of talk. So feel free to give if you have any questions, just feel free to drop in and comment. We will just highlight it later on in Facebook comment or YouTube comments. Thanks for joining us as well for tonight, to watching this interesting talk tonight. And thanks to Li Hau also for joining in from Singapore and supporting the Malaysian tech community by giving a talk today. And let me bring him up in. So Li Hau, you're ready? So I'm going to bring you in. I'm going to remove myself. Yep. Welcome, Li Hau. So how are you?
Hi, great. I'm great. Thanks for having me, Tewan.
Yep. No worries.
Mm-hmm.
How's the situation in Singapore now? Like, is it better? You guys can go out and eat anywhere you want.
Yeah, I think compared to Malaysia, it's much better, I would say. Though like we have slowly increasing our limit. Previously, it's like only 5 people can go out. Now, like maybe turn out to be 8. But we still have to wear mask all day long when you're outside of house. Then basically it's very stuffy. I would say like wearing a mask the
Yeah,
whole
I can
day.
understand that.
But that's how it is. Like even though we can go out, but it's still you have to wear masks and you have to take precautions and things like that.
Do you think it's like back to pre-COVID situation, or is it like still okay? You still like, but it's just like trapped inside the country itself, like you cannot do much outside the country.
Still trapped inside Singapore. I feel like probably the malls, the crowd is coming back. Like you can start to feel like there's more crowd in the shopping malls. But yeah, I mean especially like Chinese New Year lah. But then still everyone has to wear a mask and has to like tap in to enter anywhere. So it like probably we start to get used to it, but it's not like pre-COVID anymore. It's like a post-COVID kind of world where everyone has to wear a mask and has to like tap in, like, scan a QR code whenever for any place that you go into.
Yeah, and they can track you as well, right?
Yeah, so they track you where you go and things like that. So it's like better than stuck at home, like stuck at your own house, but it's definitely not like before COVID. Like things definitely have changed.
Okay, so I let you take the stage, so it's all yours.
Okay.
You can start by introducing yourself, and then straight away you can go with the slides. So I'm gonna bring up your slide as well. So
okay,
all
cool.
yours, Li Hau.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, so hi everyone. Let me introduce myself again. I'm Li Hau. I grew up in Penang, Bukit Mertajam. Anyone from Penang or Bukit Mertajam, maybe comments down. Hi. Anyway, so I grew up in Penang and I came over to Singapore to study, and then now I'm working at Singapore. So I'm currently working for Shopee as a front-end engineer. That's before that. So today we'll be talking about Svelte, right? And I'm not sure whether anyone has heard about it or like vaguely knows about it or actually heard about it and interested about it. And I find that it's interesting, so I decided to take this opportunity to come over and share with you all about Svelte. So there's this annual survey that's happening, although not sure any one of you has participated to it, but it's actually a global survey for JavaScript. It's called a State of JS. So every year they will send out this survey to all the developers out there, as much as they can basically share it out through like all the social medias and things like that, and ask about what people think about like frameworks and toolings in the JavaScript ecosystem. Right. So interestingly, this year, as in the survey that collected over 2020, Svelte is ranked like the highest in terms of percentage of like satisfaction after like feel satisfied. How many percent of people feel satisfied after using Svelte? Apparently, it's the highest among all the frameworks out there. And in terms of like interest, so this is about interest. A lot of people are now very interested to learn about Svelte. However, in terms of usage out there, it's actually very, very little. I would like compared to other frameworks For example, right now you probably would heard about like anywhere you go to interview and you probably heard about this like React or Angular or Vue. Those are like the highly being used frameworks out there. Like 80 over percent, 50 over percent. But in terms of Svelte, it's like near 50% for now. So will it be like the next hit? I'm not really sure, but this is like the survey results about Svelte about all the frameworks and particularly about Svelte. So for those of you who haven't heard about Svelte, I will personally recommend you to watch this video, this conference talk by Rich Harris, who is the creator of Svelte. He shared, I think this is one of his early talks about introducing like Svelte to the world. So this is a very mind-blowing talk, and I feel like it will be worth to watch it. and you learn a lot from it. So today I'll be talk about compile Svelte in your head. So this is the title of my talk. And why is it called compile Svelte in your head? And why is it compiling and why is it in your head? Well, we'll see, okay? So again, I think I kind of introduced myself early on, but here is, again, like myself, this is me in picture. Not sure is it nicer, but I'm a front engineer at Shopee and also like currently a maintenance in Svelte. And these are like my social media links, like my Twitter accounts, and also recently I started creating YouTube videos. So this is like my YouTube channel. Okay, so before we start, let's do like a recap on creating like dynamic elements or creating elements in like using JavaScript, like plain JavaScript. So I know that we very used to write application using like React and Angular. Like we kind of lost touch about like what are the actual DOM APIs that you can use to create elements on the screen. So here is like a recap. So first thing is when you want to create an element, you use this document API called document.createElement, and then you pass in like the tag name, like h1, which is like creating a heading one. And then to set the contents within the header, you will use like h1.textContents equals to a string. And then now you have that h1 element, you want to append it to the DOM, you call document.body.appendChild. So this way you will see that in your in the screen, in your DOM, you have one h1 element with a text content hello world. So to update it, probably somewhere in your code that you trigger a function and you call this like text content equals to by world. So you update the text content. And then to remove it, you would use document body.removeChild, and then you pass in a reference of that element, and then this will remove the h1 from the body. So another thing that probably we haven't been using, like we've been like so used to maybe like using importing CSS files or CSS in JS and all these things. Another thing that probably if you want to do it in like just plain JavaScript, to add styles to an element, what you would do is probably you create a style element, you create a style tag, and then you can set whatever styles that you want, the CSS code as a text content of that style element, and then you can append that style elements to the document head by using document head.appendChild. Right. So so in this case, we add CSS that says class ABC has a color blue, right? And then how to like add class to your element so that you can target that element. So you use like maybe like set attributes. I set your class attribute to have a value called ABC, and this way you will see like your hello world is in blue color. Yeah. So and then we have like elements on the screen. We can remove it. We can style it. Then you want some interaction. So to add interactions is like to add event listener. Like for example, in this case, we want to add a click event listener. You use a button.add event listener click, and then pass in a callback function. So this function is the event listener where it will be called whenever you click on the element. So every time as you click it, you will see like hi in the console. So this is the summary that we've seen: creating element, remove, update, add styles, and click event listeners. So although like we've been using, like if you're using a framework like a React or Angular or Vue or any frameworks out there, you probably don't really write this kind of code anymore. You probably use some sort of templates or maybe using JSX there to declare how your view would look like, how your UI would look like. But then at the end of the day, the framework itself that you're using will try to understand whatever you're writing, maybe understands like, read through your templates and understands it, or read through your JSX elements and understands it. And then it will translate them into instructions to create actual elements on the screen, which is under the hood, they're actually going to call these APIs, right? I mean, I mean, this is the basic APIs that you need to create elements on your screen. And so although like your framework allows you not to write them, but it's under the hood, it's still using these APIs to do the job for you. So is there a way that and that creates like a layer of abstractions, right? So is this the only way we can do by frameworks, or is there a different way of thinking it, right? So that's introduced Svelte. So before I talk about how Svelte works, maybe let's just take a look at a quick introduction on like the syntax of Svelte. So a Svelte component is a file that you name with like some component name .svelte, SVELTE, instead of like .jsx or tsx if you are using a React TypeScript. So you so you don't have to have a function, or you don't have exports or anything. You just whatever the content, whatever you write inside it will be how your component will look like. So it feels like a HTML. So it's in fact it's like a template, superset of HTML. We'll see why I say it's a superset, but it just looks like the HTML. So over here, if your component will have a h1, we call hello world. So this is what you will write. And then to add a style, is you can write style tag and then write your style inside. What cool about this is that when you add style and then you say h1 has to be color called Rebecca purple, only the h1 within this file will be in color Rebecca purple. Any h1 outside will not be affected by this style over here, right? So it's scoped to your to all the elements within this file only, and this is like a CSS scoping, right? So yeah, and to add data in Svelte, you would add a script tag, and then you declare variables. So any variables you declare, you can use them in your templates, in your HTML, using curly brackets. So you open the curly brackets and then put in a variable name, then the value of that variable will be in there. So you'll see hello world within the h1 in your screen. Then to add EventListener, we use directives. So directives is like a few words and then a colon and then something, right? So in this case, it's an on directive where you on colon and then click. And then in the attributes value, the value over here you can again to add JavaScript expressions, you use a curly brackets. And over here, you can pass in functions like this, where this function, you declare it in your script. You declare on-click button. So you can, on-click button, you can call this, so when you click, it will call this function, right? So every time when you click, it will console out 0. And then you can actually update your data. When I say updates, you can, all the variables over here that you declare within your script, you can update it like how you would updating a variable. So I want to update a variable count. I want to increment the value of count by 1. Now say counts plus equals 1. So every time when I click this button, the value of the count will increment by 1. And then on the screen, you will see that this over here will update itself also. So you will see like count 0 and then count 1 when you click. And then when you click again, it will be count 2, count 3, count 4. Right. So this is how you would write a Svelte component. But then all this code you write is not JavaScript, right? All these things are not. Sorry. Whoops.
Sorry guys, I think we lost him for a while, so just hold on a bit while waiting for him to come back. So meanwhile, right, waiting for him to come back, right? So I just want to share a couple of things as well. So just an announcement, right? We shout out is we want speakers, so please feel free to have speakers and to join us. If you have any speakers or you're interested, just feel free. If any company want to do a collaboration as well, feel free to reach out to me, and we can just continue. I think you can find me, and Facebook also can, LinkedIn also can. Just feel free lah. Like, so yeah, I think he's back. So let me add him back again. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry.
Don't worry. He's back. Don't worry. So yeah. You want to share your screen? Yeah.
I'm share now.
I'm just doing a commercial break.
Hold
I
on.
think because it's the moment you break cut off. No worries. I think the moment you cut off was like at the climax of it.
Oh, now where am I? Where is my screen? Okay. I think it's showing now. Present. Well, present the view. Then, oops.
Okay, let me continue first. While we're waiting for you. So yeah, so he's still trying to set up his internet. He's having issue with the internet lah. So if any speakers, feel free to reach out to your company hiring or what you want to do a shout out. Feel free to reach out as well. We're willing to do a shout out for hiring, especially in this tough company where people are letting go people and everything, right? So we are open for it as well to post it for free. So no worries about it. And keep the question coming as well. So if you have any question, feel free to post in the comment, and we're happy to have you on the to answer it later on after this talk. And what else we have this slide? Not yet. Announcement. So yeah, and another thing also I'm thinking about changing the format as well. Like we used to have a different format when you're having a physical meetup, right? Like 2 talks and 1 break and a lot of pizzas. But since we're going online, I'm thinking of I'm doing 1 because per meetup. So you want to change the format as well, let us know what you like to hear, what kind of topic you like to hear. Feel free to reach out to me, and so we know. Okay, I think he's back, so let's add him back. All right, so you don't have to see my face. So Li Hau, is your back?
Okay.
Yeah. So
yes. Me, right? Sorry. I accidentally clicked on my cable and then I got disconnected and everything crashed. So anyway, I'm back. So where was I? Let me think. Okay, so this is where Svelte is going to be different from other frameworks. Is that whatever you write over here is not JavaScript. It's like a HTML code, and Svelte actually reads all this and then tries to compile into JavaScript code, and it will try to do it as efficient as possible. Meaning, it will, and in the later part of the example, will show you. But here's a gist of it: is that whatever you use, it will only generate codes just to create a component that does whatever you write over here. So if you don't have EventListener, then you don't have code that does adding EventListener to your element. If you don't have a state, if you don't have variable, then it does not have code that generates that handles the variable's value to change, right? So you will read through your code, understand your code, understand how you use it, and then generate as efficient as possible code, a JavaScript code out of it. So that's why I say it's a compile. It does some sort of compilation. You will compile your HTML code into JavaScript code. And in this talk today, the main idea is I want to show you how this process works. I want to show you like how this code will turn into JavaScript. Like in terms of like where the generator, we will take a look at the Svelte code and then JavaScript code, compare side by side, and then we'll show you that where does this JavaScript code comes from, why is it there, and what does it do, right? So that you can actually kind of like compile it in your head. We will kind of do like a mental processing, like, oh, this will give this, okay, this will give you this, and this will give you that, things like that, right? So actually this title, before I go on, right, I want to say like credit this title to Sean Wang. I'm not sure you guys know about him. He's pretty famous conference speaker that talks about React, and he one day comes to Shopee building to do sharing, and then he was sharing about Svelte, and he used this title called Compile Svelte in Your Head, and I find that it's very catchy and it's very nice. So that's why I was asked him like whether I can use it as well in my sharing. And here you have compile Svelte in your head. So let's take a look at the simplest example over here. So we start with the hello world, right? Yeah, Amiral, it's Swix, yes. Anyway, come back. I was answering from the comment. Anyway, we have hello world h1 over here. Take a look at how it will look like in your in a generated Svelte code, JavaScript code that generated by Svelte. So this is a code that you will see. It will only be like this, right? And this code itself already can be used like in any, you can import this app and then use it anywhere you like. So first thing you will see is that you have a function at the top called create fragment. And inside a fragment, it will return an object, right? You will see like objects that has method called C and M and D, right? So this function will create this fragment, which is like you will try to return this object. So this object probably would call it like fragment, right? But I find it easier to think about this as this is like the recipe of your components, like the recipe on how to create all the elements inside your component. So it has methods, it has a lot of methods, but because of like how we write over here, this is a very simple example, then you only have methods necessary for your elements, for your components. So over here, we only have 3 methods, C, M, and D. They're actually shorthand for C for create, M for mount, and D for destroy. So why is it just CMD instead of create, mount, destroy? Well, this is because we want to save characters, and anyway, no one actually reads this except like the Svelte code will understand this. So we'll try to save as much as possible, only use like 1 character for each of the method lah, right? Because this method is probably you're not able to mangle it and then make it shorter and things like that. Minify does not minify properties, right? So that's why when it generates, it already generates the shortest possible method name. Then over here, you have an app class, right? This app class is export default. So people outside of this, when it imports a Svelte component, we're actually importing a class, which is the app class, which extends from the Svelte component. So with this, right, probably you will actually use it like you import this, right? This is your default export, and then you can use like you can create a new instance like new, and then you set a target. The target is where you want to mount this component, and props is like the properties that you can pass into your app.svelte, your app Svelte component, right? And this way you already create your like a hello world within the body. So instead of having to write, so this is only the code that you will have when you write this here h1 hello world. This is the code that will be generated. So if you want to write it manually, like in the old days, then I guess you will write it even shorter code lah. But in terms of generated code, I guess this does pretty good job at it, right? For example, if you have React, probably you have one huge library of like just doing like a virtual DOM diffing and do all this optimization stuff, and then even your application just need to display one h1 hello world. You also have to ship the whole React library plus your code that you've written. Over here, you only ship like this code, right? This is the code that you see that will be shipped out. So come back to over here to the class. We see that in the constructor, we call the init function. And in this init function, we pass in the create fragment. So this is how the code above, like the function create fragment and the class links together, right? So yeah, over init, you call a create fragment, you pass in a create fragment in. And within an init, if your component itself has nothing, if you don't write anything at all, then the generic code, it will even be much smaller. It will be the place where you write create fragment will become just null. So this is still a component that you can import and instantiate, by itself does not generate any HTML. That's why there's no create fragment. So as you can see over here, again, I need to reiterate is that it tries to generate as efficient as possible code as you can by understanding your code that you've written over here. So let's take a look at the init function. So this is like screenshot from the source code. Probably we're not gonna go through every single detail, but we're probably gonna glance through like over here you see that this like sets up like life cycle events like set up internal states and a lot of things right? And then yeah, it will create like context which will briefly touch about it later on. We will touch about it later on, but we just briefly go through over here. You create a context, and then you update, and then you set up ready, and then you just run, things like that. And there's a lot of things setting up, right? Yeah, so we're gonna go through it. So now take a look at what happens if you want to add a data, right? In the previous example, we say you can declare a variable over here, and then you can use a variable within a curly brackets. Right? So what happens is that now the code will change a bit. You'll see that the H1 over here that you wrote, the text content instead of hello world now will become like a template literals with hello and then name, right? And then this name is the variable that you write. And the variable you write is actually copied over here into the code. So you'll see that the code is copied over, and then the hello name is copied over kind of over here as a template literal. And then this is it. This is extra difference from the previous code that we've seen. And now, if you add another function that allows you to update the variable name, then more things will come about, right? Over here, you will see that, immediately you can see that the code looks longer now. You have more things that you've never seen before. So the first thing is, previously we know that like the hello name itself over here is not going to be changed. We don't only create like one text, one H1 element, and then we send text content. But over here, we know that this part is hello is static, and then the name is not static, right? It's dynamic. Then we actually break it down to two text nodes. So two text nodes, so that we can every time when name change, we just need to change the second text node. And then we immediately see a new method over here in the recipe, right? The fragment recipe. Here we have a new method called P, which is update. So over here, this function will be called, this method will be called whenever something has updates and needs to update the text, right? So over here, you see like set data it passes in the tag T1, which is the second text node. We will try to set the value, right? And here we see like there's a new function coming out about, which is instance. So this instance function is created, is generated, and then this instance function is being passed into the init function, right? So previously, if you remember, here is like these options and then null and then create fragment. As soon as you have variables that acts like a state within your component, you have an instance function generated, and then this is being passed in as instance right now. So the code that you've written over here within the script tag is all copied over within this instance function, and then it will try to return like a variable over here, right? Variables that will be used that is dynamic. Right, so why is it different that previously you see like a name is that previously when we have static data, the name is like outside of the instance function. We don't even need instance function, but here you need this instance function, right? That's because previously the name is static. All the components, however many components you create, all the variable name is the same for each of the component. But then right now, if you have this like variable that will be changed, that is dynamic, then it really depends on the component, right? If you have two components rendered side by side, one you call update, one you don't, then the variable name should be different now, right? So it should be locked within a scope, within an instance scope over here. And how does the Svelte knows that variable, like the name variable is changed? Well, it actually tracks all the variable. It actually knows, for example, whether a variable is mutated. For example, you try to like increment, you use like updates, right? You try to plus plus, minus minus, plus equals, minus equals, multiply equals, and things like that. You try to mutate this variable, Svelte will know. If you try to reassign this variable, for example, name, you reassign it with a new value, like that, things like that, Svelte will know as well. And then if you try to reference this variable within a template, you will also know all of them, because if you change a variable, but this variable is not being used in the template, then it kind of know that, okay, maybe it does not need the update method, the P method, because nothing needs to be updated except like something else that needs to be done, but not updating the fragment. There's nothing in the template need to be updated, right? And then it also knows whether like whether a variable is like say writable or not. For example, in this case, whether you declare with a const or let, kind of know like whether you're kind of able to see that, okay, if it's I, then it's only readable, and if it's let, then it's like probably writable, and then whether it's being mutated later on, yeah, it's a different story, right? So it tracks all the variable, and that's why you can see this instance method right now over here. And then next part that I want to show you is that over here, this instance function returns an array, and this array is an array of variables that will be used, like a states that will be used within this component, right? So name is like the first item, and so over here you would see that it's being referenced as context 0, and then invalidate 0, right? So you can imagine this is how it works. You call, so within the init function over here in the app, in the init function, conceptually what happens is that you will call context, you will call instance function to return you an array of context. And this context is like the state of your application, of your component. And then this state is, so every time when you call, you return a new array, right? So this is like every time you call, you create a new state. So you only call once during init, and then this state will be per your component instance. And then you pass this context to the create fragment function. That's why it's being passed over here. So to access this name, you will say context 0 over here. So you'll call this fragment.c method to create all the elements, and then call the fragment.m to actually mount the components to the DOM, to the target lah. So then next question will be, what is this $invalidates? Well, this $invalidates actually is like this. So every time when you, as I say, Svelte knows that when you try to update a variable, right? So when you write things like this, name, count, or foo, point A equals to 1, what happens is that Svelte will insert like instructions right after this, right? It will insert like invalidate instructions that invalidate this variable. So we try to invalidate the name. So when you change count, you update the value of the count, and then you will say invalidate, so that it knows that what has changed. And after it knows what has changed, so this is like conceptually how the code works, is that once you update a variable, you will mark that variable as dirty. So this variable is dirty, and then you will schedule an update. So over here you will schedule an update. So when you update, you'll call this dirty with the P method. So the P method will be called with the context, which is the state of your application and what is dirty. Right. So when we come back over here again, you will see that this dirty comes in over here, and then you will check whether this dirty flag, whether the name is dirty, and then you will update the name. Right. So if you have a lot of elements, each of the elements depends on different states, then you have a lot of if case. So you only update the element if the variable that depends on the element has changed. And in this case, only the name node over here only depends on name. That's why we'll check only for the name. All right, so let's fast forward over here and then add event listeners. So here we write an add event listener. So what happens is that you will see new code generated over here. Firstly is, again, this code is being copied over here. And then for this event listener alone, we will see 2 more codes generated in the fragment, which is the recipe. So every time when you mount that element, you will also try to listen, add event listeners to the elements. And then D, as I said, is to destroy, is to remove, when you call to remove the elements from DOM. So this D will also need to call this dispose, which is like to remove the event listener. So it does clean up, right? So you won't forget about adding event listeners and then forget to remove Svelte handles that for you. Then one thing I want to point out is that, for example, if you have an element that has a lot of event listeners, right? What happens is that this is what you will see. You'll see that it will generate like this post will be like an array of all the event listeners, and then you call it run all these posts, right? So this is, I would say this like is efficient in terms of the number of code that is generated, right? It's instead of like generating like each of these listen will be assigned to a function, and then you call each of these function, right? This like creates a lot of extra code, right? I think this code is in a long run it's more efficient, and it does not do like this array thing nilly-willy, right? If you only have one event listeners, then dispose is like just a function. But if you have multiple event listeners, then you become an array, and then you call run all to call each of the function within the array. So you see that you will adapt. It will try to look through your code and generate as efficient as possible based on your code that you've written. So lastly is the styles. When you try to add a style, and I say that when you add the style over here, only the H1 elements within this file, this component file, will be targeted, will be only be set to the color by Rebecca Popo. And this is how it works, right? So it will actually read through the style, and then it will see that H1 is able to target one element within this elements that you write in a component. Then it will add like a generated random class name over here, and then you will add this random class name to your as a class besides like you will add this as a class to your elements, right? So in this way, yes, your what's that, your CSS shit, I run out of it, but it's the CSS specificity, CSS specificity increased by 1, but then it's good for you where it is like targeted to your it will be more targeted to just the component you written within this file, right? So it when I say just now, I say like it will analyze this and know that it targets something, right? So if you're writing H2 but you don't have H2 in element, you try and do that, you will see that Svelte actually warns you that H2 is not targeting anything, and then in the generated CSS, it will actually remove that H2. So a lot of times we have this problem where we have a separate CSS file and we write a lot of class, and then at the end of the day, we don't even know whether this class is being used anywhere, and then but we don't dare to remove it because we're scared that it will affect something. Well, this problem is no longer in Svelte. Basically, it will read through your styles, and then you will know that whether it will be applied to elements within the file. So only within your file, H1 within your file will be applied, and you have element. If you write selectors that does not target any element, then it will be removed. So summary, we've seen how we can create a component. We see how we add a style, see how you can add data and then update the data, and then how to add event listeners, right? And then in the generated code, basically there's 3 sections. The create fragment, which is a function that returns the recipe of how you will create your elements within your component. And then instance is like it will return you an array of states, right? And then lastly you have the class which you export and which binds, which will also call the init to bind everything into one. You will call init with create fragment and instance. So what's next? So here are some links that you can put, go and read if you're interested. So basically it's svelte.dev/ tutorial will be /tutorial, and then REPL, which is the online playground that so if this is, if you feel lazy to set up everything to just start it, you can go over here. This is a playground. Over here, when I click into it, you'll see that immediately the code, yeah, the example is over here, and then this is how it be. When I change, you will update, and then when you click over JS output, and I didn't lie to you, all the code you see just now is over here lah, right? So that is how it is. And yeah, community events or Svelte events over here, you can see any events coming up, and then if you want to join like Discord to chat with everyone using Svelte, then you svelte.dev/chat, right? This will redirect you to a Discord invite link. And then also like Twitter, there's a Svelte Twitter account as well as a Svelte Society. So Svelte Society is like a meetup, but meetup kind of organization, and every like a lot of countries have like their own Svelte Society chapter, like local chapter. Like for example, in Europe or in US, London, on NYC, New York, and Australia, right? So finally Q&A, and once again, like this is my Twitter account and this is my YouTube channel. If you're interested, you can always follow me and like learn about Svelte and front-end stuff.
Yep. All right. Thanks, Li Hau. That's really a good talk. Except for like minor hiccup there, but it's fine. I think I managed to like cover my side. So we have a couple of questions here on the side as well. So I'm going to bring up the questions one by one, and hopefully you can answer those questions. So let me find for it. Okay, we have first one. Alvin Lee has, what technology Shopee uses for mobile app?
Yeah, so actually we're using React. We've been like the project has been created since the early days of React. I wouldn't say early days of React, but it has been like this project has been started since like 4 years ago. So we're like early adopters of React. So nothing to do with Svelte. Maybe are we going to use Svelte in future? I'm not sure, but yeah, that's about it.
I mean, so now I have my own question. Like, what would you guys use for backend instead?
Backend. So actually, if you try to apply for Shopee, you would know like what are the requirements, and probably you would know like what are the we are using. So previously we were using like Python, Django, and now we are slowly moving towards Golang.
Golang. That's pretty good. My favorite one. Okay, we have another one. Amiru, question: is the output for Svelte much smaller than React or Vue projects?
Yeah, so I think as like explained through like the talk itself, is like the Svelte will generate just enough code, trying to generate as efficient amount of code that you need to show your UI, right? So if you're writing a very small application, then it's definitely much smaller than React Vue, because I wouldn't say like Vue has improved a lot over the years in terms of code, because it already incorporates like a kind of hybrid strategy in terms of their code, where it also has a compilation step where it tries to generate efficient code to the client, right? But React itself is does not use that, right? React is purely runtime. Basically, when you use React, you import the React library. So whatever any features you're using or not, you still import React, right? So whether you are using suspense or not, you're using hooks or not, you using a legacy component or not, all the codes is packaged within like the React library, right? And then you have your own code on top, right? So at the very good starts, you like Svelte does not have a library, right? Svelte code is just like a compiler where you install to compile your code. And so the code that you see is the code that you need to run, right? The compiled code is the one that you just need to run, right? So it's of course it's much smaller lah. But of course, maybe there's concerns about like because it's compiled code. So for every statement you write, you like as in an example, you see like every one line you write probably will add 1 or 2 lines, but like maybe like one line of code will increment like 2-3 lines of code, right? So maybe like in terms of the gradient of increase, maybe like in terms of React and Svelte, maybe like Svelte is slightly a bit higher, right? Because you every line of code is like like you generate slightly more code lah, right? So in terms of that, someone has actually done a research. Probably you can find it. Google, you can Google it. I'm not sure where. Probably if I can find it, I also can post it in the YouTube or Facebook link, or maybe I share it to you later on. It's like someone did a research on this, and basically they found out that yes, the gradient in terms of increasing number of lines of code that you write in React and number of lines of code you write in Svelte, that there's a graph where it increased Svelte is a higher gradient than React. So probably at the initial point, it's like React is much bigger, but increase much slower, and Svelte starts very very small and increase slightly faster, and then they will intersect somewhere, right? And so someone did this research and found out that in the point where it intersects is, I can't remember exact number, but it's a point that you would not write a code that big, right? And if you really reach that point of like such a big code, right, most likely you would have doing other strategies like code splitting and stuff. So you wouldn't. When I say code splitting, is that you split based on pages. So yes, your entire app may be that big, but your user won't get all this code. You only get the code of individual pages that you send out that you're using. So yeah, you never kind of reach that point of time. Right? So that's the argument lah, basically.
Agree. So I have a few more questions. Right? Okay. We have Yongshen asking, what do you love most about Svelte?
Oh, okay. So there's, I think, a lot of features that in Svelte is I love about them because it's very easy to use, and a lot of things are you able to write much simpler, much easier to comprehend kind of code, to understand it, to write it, right? For example, especially in cases where maybe for example in work you've been using React, and then we try to do animations and transitions with React, and we find that wow, that is very painful to do it with React, basically to do animations with React. For example, if you want to show an element, you want to transition an element in when you show it, and when you want to remove it, you want to run a transition to remove that element. And it's a lot of coordination work, right? But in Svelte, it's you can do it very simply, and it's like 1 or 2 lines of code, and it's built in. So the code that you need to write to handle all this coordination is actually generated by the Svelte compiler, and it's being handled over there. So that it is way easier to write it lah. So hopefully maybe next time, if a chance to share about transitions or maybe other things about Svelte, maybe I can talk about it next time.
Sure. We always welcome you, man. We have another one for Yongqing as well. What's the biggest drawback in your opinion?
Okay, drawback. In terms of, okay, so I think for now, right, it is still very early stage for Svelte, where, for example, how do you do certain things? A lot of things are very much easier to do than React, right? So it's you write a very simple code and it just works. But of course, when you start to build slightly more complex stuff, I wouldn't say it's not. It's definitely possible, but I would say maybe we haven't come up with there's not a lot of people the people are starting to adopt it.
Proper roadmap,
in terms of ecosystems of libraries out there. Probably not as much as React lah. In React, anything that you can think of, there's a library for it, that kind of thing. UI libraries and all this stuff. So in Svelte, it's slowly growing lah, right? So basically, I would say it's still growing, right? And probably I can share one more. Then probably can share one more about the drawback, right? Where so
we have one more question. How about from Amiro again? How about compiling to EX5 or lower? Does Svelte does it for you?
No, so Svelte does not do that. So meaning, if you've been using Webpack to do transponding using a Babel loader, you can continue to use that. So basically, you put a Svelte loader first and then put your Babel loader next. So Svelte will generate like code that is probably like ES6 and above. And so even if you write it basically it you remember like the Svelte code, you have a script tag. Whatever you write there, Svelte understands until ES 2020. Right, so it uses library that passes the JavaScript code and that re-updates oftenly. So it's like ES 2020, but
So
then
relies on the library as well.
like the latest kind of ES version lah, right? And it does not do any translation. So whatever you write, it will just copy in the instance function, right? As I mentioned earlier, you just copy over. Right? So if you want to support browsers, if you want to support this syntax for like older browsers, then you have to basically based on the output code from a Svelte, you do your own transpilation again. So probably you add another loader like Babel loader to the transpile it up, right? So in your rollup, then probably it's a rollup plugin Babel or something. Yeah.
Understand? I hope that answers your question, Amiro. So we have one more. Okay, two more actually. So let me bring this out first. Has have a question. Do you think Svelte is production ready now or not yet? So I think this one you can combine with my question, which I have. Do you think any companies in Malaysia or Singapore that's already using Svelte in production at the moment, or actually trying out Svelte?
I don't really follow a lot of this one. I don't really track it down, but I don't really know like what are the companies in Malaysia and Singapore is using it. But definitely like sorry. Yeah, but there's like companies in like over like in the global like they are using it. Like for example, there is like companies that does use it as like say data visualization kind of project like Economist and New York Times, right? There's also like companies like Apple and even like Google. They do use it as in, for example, when they have like a new page or new features. Like I think I saw like there's one Google, I can't remember what page, they were like using Svelte in that page itself, right? So there's like companies slowly using them in their new projects lah, right? But of course, like even if you ask me whether it's production ready, it's definitely production ready. But if you ask me whether should I like rewrite home my entire application to be Svelte, I wouldn't say yes lah, right?
It's a minor part, small part.
Yeah, do it for a new project. Don't rewrite for the sake of like trying out Svelte, right? So
it's not worth it.
I mean, that's like, I mean, I wouldn't do that for in Shopee as well, right?
Otherwise, you already migrated
an
all
entire team to rewrite, and actually you're doing nothing except like the user won't realize anything different except like it's written in Svelte versus like React and things like that.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, I have one last question. Any latest news about Sapper?
Oh, okay. So I think for just before that, maybe explain a bit on like what is Sapper, right?
Yeah,
so Sapper, so Sapper is like a Svelte application builder, or it's like a framework that we create by the Svelte core team to like a opinionated way of like creating Svelte applications. Right? So for example, in React world, draw similarities will be like you use like maybe like Next.js to build your React application that does like both server-side rendering, maybe pre-rendering, and then client-side hydration and stuff, right? So Sapper is like that when you have like React versus like Next.js or Nux for Vue. So so right now what happens is that we are like this. So Sapper was created just like to show, like to demonstrate, like okay, if you want to write like this kind of server-side rendering application in Svelte, this is how you would do it, and a lot of built-in methods to do it, a very opinionated way. But then it was like an experiment, and then probably there's a lot of bugs coming up, and it's a bit hard to manage them and fix all of them. So what we decided is to kind of and time goes, right, and as it goes, new technologies come up, and you wanted to try experiment with new stuff as well. So that's what happens, is that we will try to come up with a new way of doing it, which is Svelte Kits. If you heard about it, basically it's like a new way of doing it. And basically, the API and everything is very much based on Sepper. So if you're having a Sepper app, then probably you would have a very simple way of migration, a very simple migration path to convert your application, basically.
Okay, understand. So yep, I hope that answers your question, Amirul. So I think with that, right? So let me add this. Yeah. So with that, right, we actually pretty much come to the end. Actually, like, I think we had enough good questions. So I'm going to keep this last question for you. So hopefully you can answer it. Meanwhile, if you guys haven't followed him on your and YouTube, feel free to go join and follow him. Yep. So my last question is for tonight, right? It's like for you. How do you become a maintainer for Svelte.js?
Okay. That's a very interesting story. So okay, let me maybe I'll start from the beginning. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it was like in 2019 late 2019 October. So I'm not sure like anyone of you heard about Hacktoberfest.
Yep,
So
we had.
yeah,
Oh,
so
yeah. We want a free T-shirt, man.
yeah, so GitHub has this event annually called Hacktoberfest, which is it tries to promote open source. It tries to promote more people to contribute in terms of open source, right? So back then I was just curious about this project called Svelte, and so that's how I get involved in. So I went in to just read about the code, lah. I wasn't really go there. I didn't really go there for the Hacktoberfest because I actually work on other projects and I already got like enough quota to get like a free T-shirt and stuff. But
Yep.
so I was just like I went there to take a read about the source code to actually understand how it works, because I'm pretty interested in terms of like this kind of a compilation kind of frameworks, because it's a very new idea, right? So
Right.
I took a read about their source code, and then I realized that there's a lot of things that are like commented out as like to do, like basically like there's a very simple case and then there's a to do, handle this, and then probably that to do is written a few months ago and no one actually come back and fix it. So
Yeah.
that's what I read, that's what I discovered, and I decided to go in and just add that feature or fix it. So
Yep.
that's how I started to make like merge requests and understand. So I slowly understand more and more about like how it works, and then how as I work with the features, right, you slowly understand more about it, and from there I find it very fun. So I just do more and more, and then one day they just like message me and ask me like whether I want to join to be part of the team, right? So that's how it goes.
Wow. That's really interesting, man.
Mm.
So thank you so much for having joining us tonight, giving a very good talk and answering all the questions. It's good to have someone Malaysian from South there in Singapore to give a talk back into Malaysian again. So I'm going to do a closing. So I'm going to like remove you for a while and then get back to you in a while. All right. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So guys, there you have it. We have Li Hau tonight. Maintainer of Svelte.js, the front end developer for Shopee. So you can follow his social media and stuff like that. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, lah. Like this is our first meetup for the year 2021, and we decided to go online for this year. So if you're hiring any shout out, just feel free to post. We will open to it as well. We always like I think in this moment a lot of people are looking for a job as well. So if you are, just feel free to post it or contact me if you want to be a speaker as well. Feel free to reach out to me or just post in the group. Yep, guys. Good night. Have a good time. Stay safe. See you around, guys. Yep. Bye.